All of the single-player games need the same thing. No matter big or small, cube or flat, they all need some kind of AI. Interacting with the game environment is cool and all, but there needs to be other forces which influence it too. Enemies to try to kill us, other leaders trying to oppose our holy crusade, and NPCs which walk very slowly to try and frustrate us into going outside and finally touching grass. Without these external forces, the gameplay experience would be bland and hollow. But how to even compare an AI from this to an AI from that? Well, there are certain patterns to follow, and today I want to show you two of the most popular approaches to take when writing your own AI. I really hope you enjoy. Before we begin, I'd like to clarify that we are not making a machine learning algorithm you may know from ChatGPT or Midjourney, which are so popular recently. The term AI, meaning artificial intelligence, has been used in games for years to describe an algorithm that determines behavior of computer-controlled entities in the game. It means that it is not able to learn, become self-conscious, or take over the world, alright? I thought it is best that I clarify that first, since people around me got it confused quite often recently. Maybe we need to change a naming convention for those old-school algorithms. I don't really know what should they be called, but you can leave your ideas in the comments. It may range from simple patrol patterns in side-scrolling games to complex hunting behaviors visible in Rain World Downpour. Depending on the game context, different kind of approach is often taken to write such an AI. Two examples we can use are Far Cry and Sid Meier's Civilization. As you can tell, these two are quite different in the way you play and decisions you are supposed to make. That's why two different approaches are needed to create AI for those. Fortunately, such algorithms do exist, and let us start with... The most classic approach to writing AI involves something called states. A state is a very simple, repeatable behavior, so standing still and shooting an enemy may be a state. Patrolling back and forth may be a state. Running may be a state. The actions have to be repeatable, so they can be activated in cycles. A single cycle for shooting may involve aiming at a given enemy and shooting a single bullet. It then may be repeated however many times it is necessary. However, suddenly a barrel of a gun becomes empty, and we cannot shoot anymore. What then? To understand what happens next, we have to take a step back and connect different states together. As states are responsible for very simple behaviors, such construct is called a behavior tree. It describes all the actions a certain NPC is capable of doing and serves as a map to guide him from one behavior to another. Let's examine a simple case so we can truly understand. An enemy is chasing you with a gun. However, the given enemy isn't especially good at shooting, so he needs to come really close to do it. To simulate this complex behavior, we need at least three states: running, shooting, and reloading. Every state needs to have certain exit condition described, or it will be looped through indefinitely. Basically, you can imagine each state to be a never-ending loop, with specific cases in which it is swapped with another loop. The enemy starts far away, in the state run. The state describes enemy movement towards the player, taking into consideration things like speed and pathfinding. It aims at lowering the distance between himself and the player. Let's create an exit state from this node. If the enemy ever reaches a certain distance from the player, we change the state to shoot. Now, whenever the enemy gets closer than 50 meters, let's say, he will stop running and start shooting at us. Now, at the shoot state, we have to devise two different exits. First, if we run out of bullets, we have to swap to reload state. And if the player gets too far back, to the run state again, because we can't aim and have to keep our distance. Let's say the player hasn't run though, and we are in the reload state now. What exit should we define here? Well, the exit will always happen when the reload animation finishes. You may suggest that depending on distance we may swap states to either run or shoot from here. It is not true though, as we may do something really cute. We may just always go to run state. Since our exit gate from run is the proximity check to the player, we will skip that state entirely if we are already in range. Through small simplifications like this, we may make our behavior tree really simpler to read and navigate. So you may start to see how that type of AI works. Designing simple actions to be performed and then devising a map to swap states and change what to do depending on certain conditions. We can easily expand our behavior tree too, with moving away if the player is too close, looking for cover if we are reloading and even patrolling, looking for the player if you hear a sound, and others. Most games which feature a 3D open world will use a state system like this. It is not suitable for all games, however. We will compare what system to use later when I show you another contender. And speaking of which, I used the 3D action adventure game as an example for Behaviour Trees, as it was the easiest example to apply this system and show you how it works. For this approach I will use my own game, Primal Fray. However, note that both approaches can be implemented virtually everywhere. Value weighing starts with an assumption that we can list every possible move to make, and that we have to choose one over the other. It is clearly visible in chess, for example, as you can only move one piece at a time. That means that certain moves are assured to be better than others. The worst playing way would be to decide your moves by random chance. What distinguishes a good player from a bad player then is choosing between those options, evaluating state of the board and making a proper choice. AI will never have an intuition of a human player, but it can measure a lot of things. To visualize that, let's focus on the movement in hex-based Primal Fray. In this game, the turns are divided into two steps, where the first one is often movement and the second one is some type of attack or buff. Choosing a target of an attack is simple enough, since there isn't really much to choose from. The true difference between players is the positioning, where you move your primals to find an opening for a deadly blow. Let's focus on the movement then and see how an algorithm may make a decision in such case. The board is made from hex-based tiles. It is, by definition, finite, which means that after we take range of movement into consideration, we have a definitive list of every choice AI can make. The main idea of value weighing system is to assign values to every possibility and choose the one with most impact. But how do we assign those values? Well, it depends. Let's look at a melee primal trying to attack a ranged one. He can only deal damage if he stands on a hex adjacent to the enemy. Let's add value equal to his attack damage to every hex he can attack from. Great. Now some of the possibilities are more impactful, given that after some moves we can or cannot attack. We may do the same thing with damage received. We look at every hex enemy may walk to and see if he can hit us from there to where we want to stand. That way we may assign a negative value to the hexes we'll get hit on if we stand there. There are a dozen other calculations we may make. I for example decided to give more value the closer a given hex is to an optimal range of a primal. That way melee primals will rush forward to the enemy and shooting primals will kite away. There are also other modifiers you may add. I decided on one I called aggression. If you are able to deal 20 damage on a given hex, but will also receive 20 damage in return, should you make such a decision? In my game, it depends on the aggression level of the enemy. It's a simple multiplier, but a welcome one. It's a simple multiplier I use to make something happen on the board. I want my game to be fun first, and long stalls where it is not optimal to move for either side aren't really fun. So if the match gets too stale, I crank the aggression up to make the AI rush the player down. It may not be an optimal play, but sometimes it is necessary to decide what is more important. It is quite a simple example of value-based system. However, note that the best undefeated chess engines use the same approach as I presented here. They are of course very optimized and weigh values many moves into the future, but the basic approach is the same. Calculate value of every possible move and weigh them together. There is an infinite amount of ways you can write the AI for your game. It is best if you make it as personalized as you can, since all games are different. Two approaches I presented here are the most popular ones, but I think that for a reason. The behavior tree-based approach can easily be used in real time, where entities perform actions for a certain amount of time. Main disadvantage of that system is that the AI has no real insight of what is going on at a bigger picture, and you will need a lot of testing to ensure that it has an out from every situation. The second approach is mainly used for turn-based games, where actions are singular. The main difficulty here is to think of the most optimal value assigning system. There is no magic involved, only calculations, so it is on you to devise a smart way of playing a certain game. There of course could be hybrid approaches too. Value-based system is better for making good decisions and behavior trees for smooth gameplay. The first one can decide what kind of general approach to use, and then the second one kicks in to perform it. The possibilities are endless, and the most important aspect is that the result you come up with feels great in your game. Thank you all for watching. If you want to support me directly, you can help me develop my game on the Patreon. Any tier gives you access to the current build of the game, and all the money goes towards development. If you also want to see the progress Primal Fray made in its first 6 months of development, you can click a video here.